Hello. So it's my pleasant duty to introduce you to the final person who's standing in front of you today at this event. Thanks very much from the general ambience of the chat and the conversations I've had with people. It seems like it's been worthwhile, and I've certainly enjoyed meeting the people that I've spoken to today. There's going to be obviously an opportunity to continue on the hallway conference at the after event. We've deliberately made it so it finishes a little bit early as well, so we're trying not to get that end of day fatigue so much. So I look forward to having more chats with you later on. So I had a thing that I was going to just read out about Nigel, but I won't do that. I'll just say that he almost needs no introduction, but I will anyway. Nigel Dalton is the chief inventor at REA Group in Melbourne. He's also known as I don't know who first called you this, the godfather of Agile in Australia.
I'll explain that.
Yeah, having worked at Lonely Planet and being responsible for a huge diaspora of people moving out of that and moving into lots of different companies around the place. He's a big supporter of the things that I've done in the community. He's a big proponent of Lean as well, and he will explain to you that he's recently come out in public and said, Agile's over at REA, we're doing Lean. So he'll explain that for you as well. So yesterday I was here doing a reconnaissance, and Nigel was here looking at robots and holograms and self-driving cars as part of his some of his other work, and he's been running around talking to real estate people in Adelaide all day, and now he's here for you for the next hour. So please welcome Nigel Dalton.
Thank you. And if the technology works for us, we'll get to see a picture of me in my underpants. So Captain Agile is the character my son, then about 11 years old, made up for me in the great game of Minecraft, because he was utterly sick, as so many teenagers become, or preteens, of your dad being talked about as something, and him coming home from work all the time, and his only conversation he heard with friends at the dinner table was about Agile. And this is the childish reaction to that accordingly. So Captain Agile's a bit of a burglar in this case. He's getting rained upon, and he wears the A on his underpants on the outside, custom character. I'm very grateful to him for that. And to some extent, that is the case I want to prosecute today, is that Agile is the last thing you need. It's the title of my upcoming book. At some stage, if I could actually finish the thing, Ed tells me starting a book's a great way to get a book finished, and he's dead right. Start more, finish less might be a smart thing to do. I want to talk to you today about our journey, my journey, as somebody who's been around Agile by accident since the beginnings of that term in America, when I happened to be over there doing a startup and desperately failing. So needing to understand different ways of working. And that drove me to this journey. I find I'm in a different place today. And as I see the community in Australia developing, no matter where we are in Australia, I have a strong interest in going, everything I've learned I need to share with you. This is, if I can make that work, let's go. Yeah, that's me in my day job. I'm the chief inventor. I run REA Labs. It's nothing as cool as all this. I've got little robots and little 3D printers and no self-driving car. But that's the team. It's largely a volunteer business at our place. I have a core of about 5 engineers who work, a lot of volunteerism, and we're inventors. We're not actually innovators. We founded our place because, you know, we're that company you might have in your pocket. We mastered the incredible task of putting the photographs of second-hand houses on the World Wide Web in 1996. It's kind of got... That was the simple stuff solved overnight. And the world for us has got a lot more complex since. And I don't know if the Cynefin frameworks have been talked about in the last day or so, but it's something to look into in the future. But we find ourselves problems that have got consequence, that have got complexity, that means things are interacting. And it's really fun to do those in a team kind of approach in particular. So that's my team. We do weird stuff. So that's Tammy, my Imagineer. So Chief Inventor was bad enough. The Imagineer is another job title in my team. She's got about 25 real estate agents looking at virtual reality real estate there. Funnily enough, I'm not an engineer by training. I'm actually a social scientist. I'm a behavioural economist before there was such a thing as behavioural economics, which was one of those dreadful moments later in your career you realise you're finally cool. But it gives me a kind of a psychological insight and interest into human behaviour and customer behaviour especially. So there's Tammy just persuading people that trying virtual reality for looking at property might solve a social problem, which is the complete disrespect for time, trust and transparency in an industry called real estate. And until they grasp those things, so that's an amazing time shifter, being able to look through a dozen properties on your headset rather than traipsing all over a city on a Friday afternoon or a Thursday afternoon. And that's the proposition we always start with. So my job's good. I can go out and visit customers and see what's going on in the industry. And we all most of us, I hope, live under the shelter of a roof. And so we've got some empathy for property. But how cool is it to come to South Australia in this case and find that machine? Because self-driving vehicles are at this kind of crossroads for me of artificial intelligence, machines and human behaviour. I got in that all puffed up and with Joe, my engineer, this is great, got the video to prove it, and you fill in the form and you reflect, how do I feel? Well, actually I'm a tiny bit nervous. And you take off and in the first 10 metres, I was shitting my pants. There's nobody driving this car, we're all going to die. And just being in touch with that's fascinating because, wow, that's on the scale of one vehicle that's tiny and barely going to cause any damage because it didn't go above 8 kilometres an hour. And that's right here. I love explaining that to the real estate industry of South Australia, who, as far as they're concerned, are in a quiet, bucolic backwater where there's sheep and there's grapes and there's walnuts, and it's a fantastic kind of an economy. They don't have to face any of the disruption we're seeing in Sydney and Melbourne, and in my case, Los Angeles and San Francisco and India. They don't have to deal with any of that. And then I come out here and go, well, actually you do, because it's on your doorstep. And Australian Institute of Machine Learning, ranked by some as the 3rd smartest AI lab in the world. It's like, what? It's here? Incredible. I love that about Australia. That inventive spirit that gets you there is what we chase as inventors. Innovation, finding a product customer or product market fit, is something we have to do every day. So I don't think we actually have a problem with innovation at our place, because that's how we stay in business against Facebook, Google, Amazon, those kind of people. Invention's a step before. That's going, we need to think about combining some stuff, which is kind of how I end up here, combining theories of management, theories of engineering and organisations, and social sciences. And this is probably the starting place for our journey. So it's Kaizen, which you've probably heard of. You may have read that. Nobody read the next chapter of that Lean Thinking book. And it's all about this graph. So the red curve is a typical Australian or global business. You polish that thing, the y-axis is the percentage of growth you're enjoying in your revenue in a year. The x-axis is time. And it's wonderful when you're setting out, you start out 5% revenue growth, 10%, 15%. We peaked at 35% revenue growth a year in our business. And then something goes not quite right, and then suddenly you're back down to 25% and 20%. Now, there's some managers in the world whose sort of frame of mind is going to say, well, that's because you're managing really badly. You're just shit managers. You need to manage harder. And they send you back and you polish your Gantt charts and you get more efficient. And, if you're a nasty business, you lay some people off and they're just going, you're heading back down the curve. You're down, going, there's way more to be had. There's another frame of mind that says there comes a point in time where you go over the hill and you start going down. No matter how much you polish that turd, your annual growth's going down. Now, whether that's a product or whether that's your entire company's revenue, that is gravity. It's there in Kaizen theory from Japan. There's an Australian bloke called George Foster who went to Stanford in the year 2000 and tracked some bizarre new funny little startups like Google, who have exactly the same observed curve on products. So the answer is quite simple. That's Kaizen. It's very good. Keep doing it. you need to send some people off to do the other curve, which is the other weird Japanese word, kaikaku. And kaikaku is the thing nobody's heard of. That's a leap. That's like, we're going to do something radically different, and I need to send some people over there to do that. And the trouble with kaikaku curves for growing your company onwards is look what the direction it goes in for the first period of time. It feels like shit working on kaikaku projects because everyone hates you who's on the red one. What are you doing? You're undermining us. You're doing something terrible, and you're not feeling like you're actually achieving anything along the way. You're shrinking your idea before you turn it around. The secret is not one green curve, multiple green curves. Google, of green curves in the last 10 years, have written off in the books, like gone, didn't work, just take that off the profit at the end of the day, $9.6 billion in R&D. Now, whoa, that's what our company's worth in total after 26 years. So you have many, many green curves. And this is the kind of the starting point of the journey of, well, how are you going to do that? What is your system of, what is your way of working that accepts that's a thing? And therein lies Australia's dilemma is most managerial people were trained by people who learned management theory in the 1960s. And here we are today, they're going, no, you're on the red curve, no green curve. You just need to manage harder. I learned that lesson at a little company called Lonely Planet. So in 2007, Ed mentioned it while I was there. There was a couple of big experiments in Australia and crazy new ways of working. There was Lonely Planet and there was Suncorp, and we both spawned massive diaspora of new thinkers. 2007, I arrive. It's not doing quite as well as it should be. But that company there is doing amazingly. Nokia, wow, 1 billion customers. Who can catch the cell phone king? And it fascinates me today. Who do we hear that from? 2 billion customers. Who can catch the social media king? They go, watch this space. Because that was the year of the arrival of a piece of technology that was quite remarkable. It was actually a piece of shit called the iPhone, and it wasn't even a 3. The screen was horrible. Its battery lasted till 2 o'clock. Phone calls dropped after 19 seconds. Like there was no app store. Do you remember? Who had a new iPhone when they came in? Anyone here? Good on you. Wasn't they terrible? All you got was the apps that were on it. There was no app store. And so we were going, and we're travel, right? We're just going, you know what? The chances of someone going to London and walking down the streets of Soho with a $1,500 mobile phone is never going to happen. They're not going to look where to get a coffee on a Google map. They're not going to read TripAdvisor. I'll tell you, I say Lonely Planet in a room of people under 30 right now, and they look at me like, so, like a dating app for old people? What was that? I never heard of it. And it's gone. That was 400 jobs in Australia. That was 125 million GDP. It's gone. There's 24 people there. And that's irrelevance. And that is what's written on the back of my business card, avoid irrelevance. He didn't manage to avoid irrelevance, the former CEO of Nokia. Look at that picture on the right. That's me in Hong Kong earlier this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mobile phones, smartphones. Each one of them is a different booking system for a cab. He's got a piece of paper on the right so he can remember which one he booked. Generating more data than the moon landing. You know what? Shit changed on us. We didn't believe that would be possible. And now when anybody says, nobody will ever walk down the streets with something, or nobody will ever look at property and virtual reality headsets, do you know what I do? I buy shares because I've learnt my lesson. I was in Soho in about September, and I don't think there was a human being without a $1,500 phone in their hands looking for a place to drink coffee. Because the coffee in Soho is still pretty shit, to be honest. So you need to find out where the Australians are. Just a little bit unexpected. These are breakthrough technologies. This is a breakthrough technology that I just love, so I have to tell you the story. It's got all the characteristics of it. Again, an industry, nobody's going to buy clothes online. It's too hard. They don't fit. There's too much waste. I don't like to send them back. It's never going to happen. And then Zozo comes along, right? Has anyone heard of Zozo suits? Yeah, and my wife just loves the fact I show this in public. She's absolutely thrilled about being the Zozo suit model in Australia. She bought the suit. There it is. It's amazing. It's 3 sizes to start with. It's a Lycra suit. Every dot is a QR code. And the space between the QR codes and the shapes that result is scanned by the mobile phone, an iPhone, stuck in a cardboard thing here like this, which talks to you and walks you through what you have to do to build a model. There are no more sizes 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 or 16. There are Zozos. And that's her in the bottom left-hand corner, very thrilled to know she has 101.6 centimetre hips. But that's it, she carries that on the internet forever. She hasn't bought jeans for 20 years because there aren't jeans that fit her. She got custom-made jeans from Zozo. Handmade, probably production line to be honest, I don't know, I haven't been to their factory, and delivered through the email or through the mail. How much does all that cost? What's the app cost for a start? It's free. What did the suit cost though? That's the trap, isn't it? It's free. How much did the jeans cost? They got to be $200, right? Handmade, custom-made jeans for your body shape? $58. That is not even their money-making... That's not even their plan. Their plan's quite simple. Sell the Zozo sizing model to every person, every fashion house in the world to make sure their clothes fit and reduce waste. It's a Japanese guy. It's his natural inclination. Reduce the waste in the ecosystem. And my wife, former fashion and 5-store owning entrepreneur in clothing, she's going, I'm only buying this for the waste. It used to kill me, all the sizes that we had to get rid of at the end of the season. You see Burberry get into trouble this year for burning clothes, so homeless people didn't get them. Burning clothes that have been made. There's an epic amount of waste. It just goes against my Kiwi grain, okay? So this is a breakthrough technology because 170 retailers, Australian fashion houses, just signed up with Amazon. Oh, but nobody's going to buy any clothes from them because they don't make that many sizes. They can't afford to. Wait till they get Zozo'd. So here's my landscape. One of the things you've got to think about is you've got to think about your landscape you are in. Your strategies and what you're going to do are going to be relevant. Mine will have some similarities to almost every business in this room. Some of them are different. But back in the 90s when REA Group was formed, life was bloody simple. Like people sold houses in summer and sat on them in winter and sold them in summer and sat on them in winter. So you could actually have a bureaucratic organisation that responded to that accordingly with command and control structures being around shouting at people. We had one product, which was search, and then the world changed dramatically. Just as a whole bunch of people at the bottom are getting started, Google, Amazon, those kind of things, starting to use the internet to do business, we woke up to the fact the web was now a thing and data was becoming incredibly important. Because now where we are on the right-hand side towards 2020, that bureaucratic search organisation is of little use to the world. Because we now live not in this the left-hand side, rhythmic, easy to understand plan and budget for world. We live in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And I can tell you, there's not a person over 50 in an executive role who finds it comfortable admitting that is the case. Because we all were educated in the 1980s and 90s that that was the way you ran business, and I know how to control that with spreadsheets and PowerPoint. I can't control that shit on the right. It's frightening. So organisations' shape has to change, your understanding and approach has to change, and that's why I'm so excited to see you here, because this is the beginning of that thinking. You will become that generation. Arterial sclerosis will deal with my generation, okay? Basically, heart attacks. We'll kill all the old white guys in charge, and then somebody's going to have to step up with a methodology and a philosophy of managing. And I propose to you, there's better ones than that on the left-hand side. Military terms, that's VUCA. On the left-hand side of that there, that's basically marching up and down the square with the sergeant major shouting at you. That's what bureaucracy is in that sort of a model. And that's a brilliant model if nobody's shooting at you. But if you go into an environment of VUCA, drop behind the lines in Afghanistan, and the sergeant major wants to stand up and shout at your organisation where to turn left, right, turn about, straight ahead, they will be shot first and then followed by the rest of you. And you read the military models, and it is a continuum of command and control, so don't misuse that phrase. That it is between marching up and down the square and drop behind the lines in Afghanistan with 9 of you. and the communication obligations and the way you run your organisation in VUCA are remarkably different. It's come to us because the whole business model we set up in 1996 is broken. People don't want to use this 3 inches to search through the photographs of second-hand houses anymore. They want an AI-driven recommendation, a matching, not a searching, between you and a property you can rent, a property you can buy, a home loan you can possibly get, a new property you might want to consider, some inspirational content about an innovative way to have your garden watered. Matching is what we have to do today, which is why I'm so interested in institutions like this when they're starting to think about artificial intelligence. So all of the result of all of that is nothing is where you left it. So I left travel disrupted at Lonely Planet by TripAdvisor and Google Maps, and now they've been interrupted by a non-traditional competitor called Tinder. Because Tinder is the new travel guide. It's perfect. You know what? You go to a place. Some of you might need explaining how Tinder works. It's a dirty dating app, okay, for those of you who weren't familiar, right? But it's all visually based, using this supercomputer to decide if this person is a person you would like to shag. Right for shag, left for no, okay? Here's the correlation they worked out. So you go to a foreign place, don't take the Lonely Planet guide, it weighs £1 for a start. Is just go there, find someone you like the look of and you think you will match, and guess what? They will know what time the cafe's open, which one to go to, what time the theatre's on, the sports, the bands. They know that. And you use this supercomputer to match it, right? Wow. If you told me that in 2007 was going to be a future competitor for guidebooks and professionally written guidebooks, I would have laughed and laughed and laughed. And actually, it's a trend I see massively in the world. Disrespect for professionalism is epic. So whether it's they elect, an orange-coloured television reality star to the US presidency, or whether it's climate scientists in Australia, because you do not have climate change here. It's very useful, actually, very handy, because it's a shit of a problem in the rest of the world, I can tell you. And in my case, real estate agents. They are professionals with professional qualifications. You know what? The respect has gone. People will listen and be more happy to be recommended by a random person that your sister-in-law knows on Facebook as to who a good real estate agent is than a professional person finding them someone. I read recently in financial services, it's terrible. People take a toss of the coin before they'll take professional advice. The only thing worse is, in fact, advice delivered by artificial intelligence, which really fascinates me as something accordingly. Jobs come on Google Jobs in America. You don't look at Seek anymore. That's a bit last Thursday. Seek is now traditional media, just as our realestate.com.au is. Bikes don't come on bikeexchange.com.au, which is the obvious place to buy a second-hand mountain bike, right? None there. As my 17-year-old, coming downstairs and I'm trying to buy him one because he's grown about this much in the last 2 years. A terrible idea buying him new bikes. So looking for second-hand ones on Bike Exchange, there's nothing. He comes down and goes, well, what are you looking at that for? They're on Facebook. I'm going, what? He's going, there's 9 mountain bike Facebook marketplaces. Why aren't you on there? Mostly because I'm not on Facebook. TV is no longer one of these kind of devices. That's not a TV. This is a TV. It's called Twitch. And like that fella there on that screen, basically, he's showing those people who are in the audience below how to play that game. There's about 600 people watching. They speak 5 languages. They're profane in every single one. And I have to explain to real estate agents, this is the new world. This is you giving someone a tour of a house while everyone in the suburb piles in with that kitchen's rubbish. And you have to deal with that. That is the new media. Who owns Twitch? Is that just some nerds in Silicon Valley? Anyone know? It's Amazon. Amazon owns Twitch. So they've got Prime and they've got this. That is television in the future. It's not where I left it. I'm uncomfortable. How do I make content for that? Do you know what happened this year? The National Basketball Association licensed Australians a feed of live games to re-commentate over the top of on Twitch. Do you know what the jail term was for re-showing an NBA game about 18 months ago? You know what Foxtel will do to you if you put Facebook Live, one of their games on their TV. Like, whoa, this world changed dramatically. And it changed for me in real estate on the right when about 2 months ago on a Tuesday, 70% of the world's rental houses went onto Facebook Marketplace directly. Now, what you have to do is hope you have an organisational culture that can cope and be that resilient as to not just give up at that point. And what the structures that were created under those bureaucracies do not have that kind of cultural flexibility to deal with that bounce back. This happened next.
Hey Google, book a table for 2 at El Cocotero on Tuesday at 7.
All right, just in case that's not available, can I try between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m.?
Sure.
All right, I'll call to book under your name and phone number, and I'll update you in the next 15 minutes. Is that okay?
Perfect, thanks.
El Cocotero, how may I help you?
Hi, I'm the Google Assistant calling to make a reservation for a client. This automated call will be recorded. Can I book a table for Tuesday the 12th?
Okay, cool. And how big is the party?
It's for 2 people.
Great. And when did you say they want to come in?
Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Okay, let me check. I don't have 7, but we can do 8.
Yeah, 8 p.m. is fine.
Perfect. And can I get their name?
First name is Anna.
Okay. We'll see you on a Tuesday. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot.
Anna for 2.
Right this way.
In May, we saw that at Google I/O. It was a service that was available to people who had research labs, who had access to big technology. In October, it's on every pixel sold in the United States. Like, whoa, how did that happen so quickly? And we thought it was weird back at Lonely Planet. One of the things we didn't like about it is, oh, you have to touch the glass. Oh, it's kind of, oh, that'll never work. There's no clicky buttons. People got weird about talking to stuff, and now we have this. What does that mean for service in your industry? How are you going to design that? How are you going to utilize that? Actually requires a mindset of complete change. And the trouble is, this is the inside of your heads. Because you've got all this stuff going on, and if you haven't, I can tell you your boss has. And it's like, oh my God, that's Nana's dinner set. That's the dinner set she left us. It's 80 years old, AKA your Nana's business model. And there's been an accident. If we open that cupboard, I can't catch them. Some of them are going to break. Some of my revenue is going to go away and be in pieces on the floor. And so what are you going to do? And most people in Australia are leaving the cupboard shut, and many are locking it or nailing it shut. I'm not changing that shit, not on my watch. I'm not going to be responsible for Nana's dinner set getting broken. Some people are opening the cupboard and having a go at catching some and restacking it. Glass cutter, inventor. Not a bad idea. I wonder what the business metaphor for a glass cutter is. An excellent consultant like this fellow. I won't go too long on this one. This is a slide I presented to a government group recently going, you know what? We've been here before. This kind of epoch of shit that we face in terms of our disruption. That bloke on the left-hand side there, a guy called Glubb, wrote an essay in 1976 called On the Fate of Empires. You should look it up and read it. It got picked up recently on a movie called The Four Horsemen, as these are the eras that every 250 years of civilization goes through. Pioneers, commerce, affluence, science, and bread and circuses. Bread and circuses is named after the Roman end of civilization when it was like, Jesus, just get them into the Colosseum and feed them bread. Distract them from destroying us all. Now, my hypothesis is quite simple. If you want an example of bread and circuses, it's the United States of America. Where are we as Australia on that thing? If you look at the era before, the era of science, it's an incredible opportunity. It's characterised by research, universities, collaboration, funding is easy to get, trained people, diverse teams, government support, and infrastructure like an NBN. So that would be good, wouldn't it? There's people there, Israel, Singapore, China are doing a remarkable job, and patches of Silicon Valley are still in that one. But America had its science era in the 60s. And they have descended into bread and circuses. The end of bread and circuses, by the way, is civil war. So that'll be a real turnaround. I think that'll happen in some of your lifetimes, that you'll see America split east and west. We have a choice in Australia right now to adopt that science mindset and go into a science era of 25 years and try and leverage off that. But it requires some new ways of thinking and some new ways of running companies. You don't have to invent them, though. They're all there in history. That bloke, Jim Womack, was the inventor of one of them, which was the world of lean. You know, there's been a massive lean movement in South Australia. Do you know where it happened? About 30 metres from here, out in the Mitsubishi plant. We're an incredibly open community of learning to work in a continuous improving, systemic way. It goes way back. People go, oh, this agile thing is so brand new. Well, you know what? It's not. It's over 100 years old. I can trace it all the way back to Hawthorne, and you probably learned it, if you studied the Hawthorne experiments at school, you were told, oh, it's all about a placebo effect, and if you just change some things, people work harder. Well, actually, you know what they turned out? It turned out to be when you change the light levels, it was a great statistical study, changed the light level, people worked a bit harder, productivity went up, changed it again, lighter, brighter. They're an electricity company, they're going, this is awesome. Every time you turn the lights up, people work harder. And then there's the good scientists, so at the end, they turned the lights down back 5% and work productivity went up again. At which point they went, oh, people are hard. But they were charged with actually figuring that shit out. And do you know what's stunning? Who figured out what the correlation that was going on at the Hawthorne plant? Because you had some famous people like William Edwards Deming was there as a 24-year-old graduate of the local university. And the person who figured it out was from South Australia, a guy called Elton Mayo. Follow him up on Google if you want to. He was a psychologist, and he went there to go, oh, I see what's going on here. You ask these people and involve them in the experiment, they think you care. And so their commitment to making the change is welded in. It's like, oh, that's quite complicated. And that gem, Elton Mayo's gem, has fueled a world of thinking about work differently, where it isn't bosses shouting at people to get work done. Now, the orange track on the left-hand side is my track. I started in that. It's the world of the MBA. It grew out of Henry Ford. I arrived at it before the year 2000, learning about total quality management, which is a tiny fraction of the thing, ISO 9001, IT infrastructure libraries, all those kind of things. Notice it dies about the year 2000. What happened in the year 2000? The internet got serious. And all those ways of working on bureaucratic long cycles started to fail. And what emerged was a couple of people had read an article by who was Jim and the gang, who are now emerging as lean thinkers, and decided, you know what, we can do software development differently. And a few people started to go, we can run businesses differently. And there it is. So I'm not going to try and go through the whole thing, because that's what Glubb teaches us. That is the final paragraph in Glubb's essay. All we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. So maybe the people in this room can put that right. Now, part of the dilemma is the complexity problem. Now, you all probably know this, you're good mathematicians. A team of 3 is infinitely harder to run than a team of 11. I suppose in management, you don't manage the nodes. You manage the nodes and the lines. And this is what crushes modern organisations, particularly when their landscape that you're strategically working on gets complicated. Between 11 people, there are 55 relationships you are managing as a leader or manager. And caring if Nigel gets on with Craig, and so if we don't get on, we're not actually going to be terribly productive together. It takes a lot of tax on managers' time. And that complexity factor, I factor that up at an industry level for us, and I get this. There are 32 players at the table in the real estate industry in Australia. Now, after 7 years, I can actually tell you what those lines mean and how much money and power flows down each of them. But I see the senior people of Australia's organisations trying to draw simple two-sided models for their businesses and getting it wrong. Because you need to understand the influence and ecosystem powers of modern organisations. Nobody exists in isolation, and your circle just went global because of the internet. And this comes to my grand unifying theorem. is that agile is the last thing you need. So it's obviously clickbait, because you do need it. It's just the fourth thing you need, right? So people come to our workplace, and you, as patrons of this organisation and this conference, anytime you're in Melbourne, contact Ed, come and see our workplace, because this is what we've learnt. Our lives are filled by competition with Facebook, Google, WeChat, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, and we're inspired by Toyota. Thank goodness they're not in real estate, that's for sure. But Toyota is unfortunately inspiring Amazon to be in real estate. How is that? Amazon worked out the most wasteful industry in Australia. 9 months to build a house, how much value-added time within that? If you had everyone lined up and all the materials lined up and prefabbed a bunch and 3D printed on the site, how long to build a house? A little optimistic. 3 to 5 weeks. I'm not going to work at night. That is how much value-added time there is within a 9 months period. So they're going, supply chain problem. We're awesome at that. Look out, Australia. Anyway, we figured out this. We had to walk up to the word management. Now, in a lean context, management isn't... Oh, I killed one. Management isn't considered a bad thing. In Australian context, if I say... I like the word association games. Let's do a quick one. If I say Melbourne, what do you say? Coffee. I say Sydney. Oh, you need to see your therapist later on, Craig. I say Adelaide. What do you say? I say wine. I'm just a wino, that kind of thing. If I say management, what do you say? Wanker. It's a universal Australian attitude towards bully boy managers that they've endured for the last 30 years. It's well earned, I can tell you, but all the research from Google's Project Oxygen, way back to Deming and the crew and Elton Mayo, says actually this is the amplifying moment of organisational survival, resilience and success. And look at those things, organisational, people don't want to be managers. They go, oh no, I don't even want one of those. Actually, if you teach them, there is a great way, a humanistic way of managing it, can be really fun. And well-managed people, which means you've focused on organisational health, you've got a clear strategy, a sense of purpose, some shared values between the people, a good org structure that's customer-oriented, you value productivity, and that's one of the great myths of management, that only the CEO cares about productivity, and all they want to do is see what time you clicked in the morning and clicked out at night and how many lines of code you made, or similar kind of trivial things. Do you know who cares about productivity in our place the most? Some of the, in traditional terms, lowest ranking people in the organisation. They hate being unproductive. They hate making things that aren't used. They hate making things that break and they have to fix. And when you have that realisation that productivity is something almost every employee cares about, things get happening. Building diversity of thinking and building scale are the jobs of management. That actually is cool work, which is what Toyota told us a long time ago. The consequence of well-managed teams are resilient people and resilient teams and an organisation that can bounce back from, on a Tuesday, 70% of rental properties turning up on Facebook Marketplace. So resilience is just bounce back ability essentially. But you see, not everyone in my world is resilient. I reckon a quarter of the people at our place are resilient. The rest are in the loop of despair because they just joined. Oh, they've changed the teams. They're not really sure what they're doing. They aren't feeling settled. They've got a new manager, and a quarter is enough. That is the critical mass to start changing the way your organisation behaves. So I'm lucky, I've got that quarter, maybe more. Resilient people are inventive, but it's no use having inventive ideas if your factory can't change direction. Oh no, I've got a 12-month plan, Nigel. It was in my PowerPoint. Didn't you go to that meeting? I'm not taking your stupid invention idea and putting it in my roadmap. You'll have to get a business case together for that and get it past the board. How many people have heard that bullshit before? And this is where the true core of agility and lean thinking comes in. Your factory, like this factory out here, be inspired by it. Because we're a factory. It took a long time for my people to accept that we were a factory. We're an ideas factory, a knowledge factory. We sit at benches look just the same as they did at Hawthorn, assembling electrical circuits. We're assembling ideas and concepts into HTML or into apps or otherwise. Now, until I took people to Toyota as a factory, their mind view of a factory was this 19th century children under the desks, sweeping up the ends of wool and getting their heads chopped off kind of piecework, nasty thing. And there's pride to be had in factory operations that are brilliant. And that's where we've got to. So it's a great circle, but pretty hard to achieve. And you shouldn't actually start by putting cards on the wall. You should actually start at number 1 at 3 o'clock on management. Now, what does the lean and agile bit mean? This is what it's come down to for us, and it's just a simple set of things. If you do these, and I'm talking at our place, we don't just do this for product, we do this for sales, we do this for finance, human resources. Every function in our organisation follows these 5 basic principles. There are another 50 which with coaching or reading you might pick up that are more advanced methods of improving productivity. This is it. Visualised work, prioritised work. There are no orphans because every piece of work that's visualised is owned. We have a daily conversation and we reflect on the way the factory is working regularly, no more than a month. Now, prioritised work, Ed and I have this debate. I'm going to assume, just to cover my ass, that that's prioritised with customers in mind, right? Not the highest paid person's opinion. One of Ed's and our friends adds a 6th finger, which is ensure the customer is in the room, right? That's all it takes to change. But the allergy of somebody who learned their management skills from somebody who was taught them in the 1960s is massive to this way of thinking. Now, here's what I think the pivotal point is. I have to persuade Australia that being a manager is okay. Your generation, you young folk up there, right? Because when I Google my manager is, and you can do the same, you get this immediate zeitgeist of what Australia thinks of managers. Bullying to me, is rude to me, is younger than me and is incompetent. Well, that's a real career aspiration for my 17-year-old, I can tell. I don't want to be one of those. They're wankers. So we had this discussion. We go, what would be amazing is if some stage people came into our organisation, instead of saying, we joined because of Captain Agile and everything's so agile at REA Group and realestate.com.au, I don't want to hear that. I want somebody one day to say, I joined because I heard the managers were awesome. And it is so hard to believe the HR VP and I roll on the floor laughing. Going, oh my God, we've got so much work to do. But we have this thing about planting the tree our grandchildren will sit under, and that is the tree our grandchildren will sit under. And this is the core lesson for us. That's the last blockbuster in the world. It's a museum piece. So you go there because 17-year-olds don't understand how we used to rent videos. And you go there to explain, well, we couldn't actually watch Star Wars when it came out because there were only 4 VHS cassettes and we were the 5th person there. So we had to wait. Explain that to the Netflix generation. Doesn't make sense at all, right? So Netflix didn't kill Blockbuster. Stupid late fees and a lack of choice and a lack of content did. Uber's not killing taxis. I mean, that's what's killing taxis on the right. That's me sitting in the Gold Coast trying desperately to be a researcher while I'm about to die because I'm double parked in a cab on a wet night. The Gold Coast, there are 10,000 people over 85 with a driver's licence. It's night time, it's 70 kilometres an hour on a 3-lane road, shung, shung, shung past me, and I need my receipt to go into this restaurant to meet customers. So it's all good, yeah mate, just tap it, it's all good. And the receipt comes out and I go to take it, and now it's mine, mate. That's the driver receipt. Oh, okay, can I have my one? And I'm about to get it when the pink tongue of death kills me. Shit, mate, I've run out of paper. It's all right, I've got some more in the boot. Round the back of the car, opens the boot, moves his drugs that way, grabs the roll, oh shit, the car's going by, opens the door, comes in, oh, the bastards, they gave me the big ones. Doesn't fit my printer. Has to rip off 50 feet, loving that as a green Kiwi, waste, perfect. Puts it in his printer and I get my receipt, and I'm at this stage like apoplectic with potential kind of death coming down behind me from an octogenarian who hasn't seen us in the rain. Why am I waiting all this time? And I go, presence of mind, may I look at your receipt so I can just see the difference? And that's them on the right. You won't be able to see it from when you are. There is one difference between those 2 receipts. The one on the right says driver receipt. The one on the left says customer receipt. I hate cabs because of that. And that is nothing to do with technology. That is business process. That is good management. That is customer orientation. Tech is never the disruptor in these cases. Not being customer-centric is the simplest thing that threatens every business in Australia. And that's part of the start of your journey, but that's not an agile thing, that's a management thing. And they have to care, and if they don't care, you have to care on their behalf, okay? Because there are some stunning businesses in the world doing some incredibly hard things that are completely capable of managing in a new way. This is one of my favourites called Buurtzorg in the Netherlands. You can read about them in Reinventing Organisations. It's about the hardest book I've ever read in my life. It's about the only guy I know who's read it. It's got all this kind of theory in the front, but jumps straight to the case study on Buurtzorg. These women decided that community nursing in Holland sucked. And they were going to, with a guy, a founder, they were going to change it. So what they did was they pitched an incredibly cheap price for the contract to do a suburb for community nursing. And they go, we're going to lose money on that one. Absolutely, we'll be out of business in no time if we can't think of a radically efficient way of doing this. And then you're talking about an industry that has call centres and the internet and pages and mobile phones and intranets and all that traditional crap. You call in with, oh, my child's sick, okay, well, someone will be there at 2:15, make sure, or if it was Australia, someone will be there between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Especially if we let Telstra run our health systems, but no, they just turned, that's their day. They flipped it on their heads was the only way to do it. To make money, the only way to do it was to go back to old-fashioned nursing, where instead of going into the home with a 3.5-minute quota on inoculating a child and getting out and onto the next scheduled task, into the home must have a cup of tea, must listen to the customer, observe the child, do this, and if you notice that the little girl over here is snivelling at the moment, ask how she's doing and what have you done about it. And this proactiveness, like equally, like the child getting an inoculation, that's an angry child by 3:30. I've had plenty of those. Not going to sleep, going to be shit. And you know what that generated? Another call to the call centre and another case. So it's great. Case demand's growing all the time, but not customer satisfaction. So nurse just takes the time and goes, you know what? This kid is going to be shit by 3:30, not going to sleep. Pamol, get them through to dinner, bath, bed. Fine in the morning. Saves a phone call, saves a whole bunch of paperwork, and job done. Get the other child cold, cleaned up, won't infect the young one who's vulnerable having had the injection. And this is not hard, but it took such a method to radically change their way of working. And it's just one of my favourite stories. The people involved with it are incredible. How many people? There's now 14,000 nurses in teams of 12, each one independent. How many people in head office admin? It's not worth going to visit. Bloody hard to get to, and there are 50 people running a 14,000 person organisation doing HR, finance and legal. Unbelievable. It's possible. And this is the lesson for me. ACOF's are very well known to people on the inside of that giant complex diagram as a systems thinker, and I think this is one of the wisest things I ever read, and some of you will be going through the same dilemma. The only thing more difficult than starting something new is stopping something old. You can avoid me coming back to South Australia, just read all these books, and I think Ed will probably distribute this afterwards. So there you go, that's the books that inspire me in particular, because it's not all dark. I'm incredibly optimistic for a next generation. All of us die of heart attacks and a younger generation take over. The graduates at my place, they give me shit. They go, oh, Grandad, tell us what you did in the war when you used to have Gantt charts. They've got no idea what that was like, and they never will. And the world will be so much more of a humanistic place to work. So join that generation, I reckon. These are the things that make it really hard to get, the change, because these are the old books. These are the books on lean and systems thinking that started it all. There's barely one written after the 1980s there, or early 90s. And this is why lean never took off. Because Agile came at a time and was invented by a group of tech-savvy developers who, one of them invented the wiki for a start, so they were able to document their thoughts and journeys directly onto a media that was instantly accessible to the world. So why do you all know about Agile? Why has Agile stolen all the oxygen out of the world? Because you are the internet generation. You're not book readers. And if you worked before that time, this is how knowledge was spread, through cellulose, like Lonely Planet books. And you have to find those, and that is the secret for our next generation. And part of my work as a director of the Lean Enterprise Institute is to get that back into circulation and give you hope that management is honourable and that constant change and concern for things like the next chapter, the Kaikaku stuff, is an amazing challenge that will make Australia competitive in the future. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nigel. I'm at the back here. I'm staying right away from the yellow microphone, so I'm going to get Alistair to throw it or pass it to you because we do have time for a few questions. He's holding it up there. Who went for a ride in the car today? I did. Yep. A few people did. Yep.
Wow, we've exhausted them after a long day, Ed. You fed them too well.
Clearly you've blown everyone's mind and they're just thinking so much about everything. So I'm going to say, don't just leave it here, right? Don't treat this like a self-help book where you read every page and you go, this is amazing, I'm going to do so much in this, that I've read in this book, close the book, and then go back and eat Macca's every day, right? Talk to people afterwards at the end of event, mixer and networking that we're having. Go to your meetups, go back to work on Monday and think, what have I learnt here? How can I apply some of these things and start changing things? How can I take learning and discover more things that feed into what I do every day? And Craig Brown, everyone. Craig's here and he looks like he wants to say something.
The first thing I want to say is thanks, Ed, for putting on another great conference. You know, Ed's been running last conferences. I helped him start the last conferences, but he's run first and he runs a bunch of other conferences around this lean agile space, and he's been doing it for, 7, 8 years, thereabouts? And he runs them pretty much close to break even. He doesn't really make big profits out of it, and he does it because he's very invested in the community and growing the community, and he believes very strongly that we should reach out to each other and help lift each other up in our professional networks and in our careers and in our workplaces and in our community. So one of the things that he wants you to do more than anything else is to pull together and network with each other and share with each other your experiences and the journey that you're on. Is that true? Yeah. Now, the other question I got for you is, do you want to run this conference again? Yes. Right? Was this really Adelaide's first Agile conference? Will we do the second one soon? Who's not going to come if we do it again? Just kidding. But you're also going to bring friends, right? You're also going to bring friendlies. You get somebody that you're a friend with or a work associate and you bring them along. And you know what else you might do? You might bring someone who's a bit skeptical and bring them along as well. And also lean in, participate and help make it a great event by learning something and sharing your own story. Hey, by the way, thanks Nigel for being a part of it, because on this 7-year journey you've consistently turned up and delivered some amazing stories. So thanks very much. Another round of applause for Nigel.
My pleasure. If I had one comment in response to Craig as well, this is how this has got done in Australia. Australia is light years ahead of where it was when I came to Australia in 2007, still being traditionally managed. It's been done through a network of humans, not books, not the web, but people and diasporas and sticking together. My door is absolutely open for any of you to come and visit. We are 20% of the way on the journey and there's tons of things that aren't right with us. We love the conversation. Your challenge to me, well, what about this, what about that, is so precious. These two guys, the same. Join that community, and that is how we will make Australia a considerably more competitive nation in the future.
Okay, so last chance for any questions for Nigel. He's got to take the 6:55 from the airport, so...
Whoa. Nice work.
Yeah, this is a question around, in terms of Scrum teams and your org structure, what's the role of your managers? Where do they fit into things?
It's been one of the most difficult transformations has been the role of manager. The job description changed 5 years ago from being the person who was the oldest, smartest, wisest, using their power and influence to tell people what to do and allocate the work, to being a servant leader. And it's an incredibly difficult model to follow if you've been already in that role as a bossy boss and feeling the weight on your shoulders of being the smartest person who knows how the process works, probably wrote it and designed it, and make it work accordingly. In our place, we talk about 3 things every day in those daily conversations. What did you get done yesterday? What are you doing today? What's blocking you? The manager has one of those 3 jobs. Which one is it? What's blocking you? They don't get to say what you're doing today. That's a collective understanding based on clear priorities and a sense of purpose. You use all this grey hair and wisdom to get the blockers out of the way, to remove the waste. And it just doesn't suit everyone, to be honest. That, in our finance teams, for example, we probably lost 80% of our managers. They're going, I didn't work in my career to this age to not be able to tell people what to do. And they went and found jobs in perfectly good organisations where bossing people around is what the job description says. That is, you're on it, that's one of the toughest changes. We flipped our organisation, for example, from a functional organisation. As one of the first things we did was had 250 IT people on level 3, then product and marketing on the next level down, sales on the next level down, finance, legal and HR in the ground floor kind of dungeon. Nobody talked to each other. It took 3 months to solve a problem. Nobody was responsible for anything. We had the classic, we built that. We're not running that. You'll need to go and see the operations people. We don't care about that. We're onto this one now. And we flipped it completely from this model to this model. We're dividing up into customer-centric groups, the whole stack. You have got sales, marketing, product, IT, finance, legal and HR all sitting with each other. And the cultural upheaval that caused was unbelievable. And it took us a year to get over that change. It's now our most serious competitive advantage. That only happened because we had executives prepared to sacrifice their LinkedIn pages. Because look, we had a head of product and a CIO. And we might have had career paths aspiring to be the CIO of an even bigger company or the head of product at Coca-Cola. And now you're some kind of weird-ass general manager role? I was general manager of a commercial real estate business all of a sudden. And that was pretty weird for us, but what we were tapping into was a generous spirit of experimentation and curiosity, if that could work. And that's the same as, it's effectively, you read about the Spotify model, we were doing it at the same time, moving into groups of 150 divided into teams of 10 sitting at benches, multidisciplinary. Decision-making accelerated like this. So waste in modern corporations is time taken to make decisions. And so we nailed it. And that is the only reason we are here today, basically, because Facebook, Google, Amazon, everyone is in real estate. Everyone's going, my manager will never handle that.
I saw a couple more hands.
My question is not related to lean or agile. I'm sorry, it's related to real estate Australia. I'm hoping it's okay to ask that question.
Well, I don't come often, so go.
And I'll probably not get a chance to meet you.
Buy shares now.
Yeah. I'm a real estate enthusiast, and I've sold 3 of my own houses myself. I want to ask, when would it be possible for an owner to sell their own houses through realestate.com.au, and is that ever going to be possible? Is that on your roadmap, or is that something the labs are thinking?
It's going to shock you. It's not on my roadmap. And you know why? Social science. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, 1934. Where does property, who knows Maslow's hierarchy? You probably all, fantastic. Right, so the bottom level is physiological needs. Air, food, water, what's the last one? Shelter. That is real estate. And with the stakes that are at the table and the complete lack of a perfect rational match in a property, doesn't matter whether you're developing a new one, buying your first home or buying a luxury home, there is no match. And so what it requires is a broker. Now, it really, and that's our assessment, is that from a sociological point of view, people are, and you look at the Cynefin model, which I talked about earlier, Cynefin, it sounds like a Kiwi swear word. There's four types of problems: simple problems, complicated problems, complex problems, and chaotic problems. And well, there's 5 because there's undefined ones as well. Renting a house is a complicated problem. Things happen in a row, but you do it every year and everyone roughly knows how to do it. Consequences of getting it wrong is that you find another place, you pay, you lose some money on your rent, you might not get your bond back. A complex problem is characterised by high consequence. I tell you what, there's 2 lawyers turn up to something, it's a complex problem. If there's more money than you'll ever hope to earn in 10 years involved, it's a complex problem. If there is family with other opinions involved, it is a complex problem. If you get the documentation on your, or we have called it a Section 32 in Victoria, you have the same down here, your initial setup legal document wrong, there are financial and legal consequences for you. And it perfectly, like you run through the sense finder thing, it's a textbook complex problem. Don't try and solve it in the same way you do complicated problems. And these are the 2 things that led us to go, you know what, real estate agents are not going away. And then we had the insight. The problem, and this is from consumer research. So the number 1 question in our consumer research lab, which I help run, isn't what everyone thinks it is. And what do you, just have a wild-ass guess what the number 1 question from consumers for us in our consumer research lab is about real estate. Most? What's the market doing? And more precisely, what is my house worth? And I reckon we're at the 100 million mark of money sunk into, venture capital money sunk into people trying to build AI around what my house is worth in Australia. Every penny of that is wasted because it is not the key question. The number 1 question is, and this might solve your problem, although you found this person, what is the name and phone number of a real estate agent I can trust? That is scarce knowledge, but it's measurable, and it's probably about 25% of the real estate agents in Australia. That's what we're chasing. Because if you get that, you get the right price. And when people are inexpert at a process that is complex, a broker, an intermediary, is a logical step. Now, what we love is that Facebook have concluded the opposite. Well, under Zuckerberg, of course they would. Everything is a 1 or a 0. There is no problem that can't be solved by code is written in their entranceway. Social scientist. There are plenty of problems that can't be solved by code. So I regret you're going to have to continue putting your properties on Facebook, Marketplace or Domain, our main Australian competitor, because unless you get a real estate license, you can't come on our site. Well, I can do other websites, but not correct. You can come on realestate.com.au, yeah. Deliberate, strategic choice. You know what strategy is? Choosing what you won't do. Could be wrong. In which case, damn.
Okay, so
yeah.
We're at the classic point where there's nothing stopping us from drinks, which is great. So I'm going to say thanks very much for coming. Have a happy weekend. Go back to work on Monday and kick some ass, right? And we'll see you next time.
Just fantastic. Next slide. Okay?
Yeah.